Welcome to my channel, where we uncover the untold stories, explore hidden histories, and bring you closer to the world's most gripping events. Today, we take you to the roof of the world, the Himalayas, to witness a silent struggle shaping the future of Asia. This is the story of the India-China border tensions. High in the jagged spines of the Himalayas, where oxygen is thin and temperatures plummet to -40 degrees Celsius, an invisible line cuts through some of the harshest terrain on Earth. Here, winds howl like restless ghosts, glaciers creak under the weight of centuries-old ice, and life clings to the edges of survival. Yet, this is not merely a land of snow and rock, it is a geopolitical chessboard. Two of the world's largest nations, India and China, stand guard over a frontier they cannot agree upon. Their weapons remain mostly silent, but the mistrust is deafening. The soldiers here endure frostbite, avalanches, and months of isolation, not for conquest, but to ensure the other side does not advance a single step. This is the story of the line of actual control, the highest and coldest disputed border on the planet, and the decades of war, diplomacy, and unhealed wounds that keep it frozen in tension. Chapter 1: The Border That Wasn't. The British Legacy. In the 19th century, British colonial cartographers, working from faraway offices in Calcutta and London, drew borders across the Himalayas with little understanding of the terrain or the local cultures. Using maps, treaties, and a mixture of guesswork and imperial convenience, they sought to define India's northern boundaries without fully surveying them. The McMahon Line, drawn in 1914 during the Simla Convention, placed the Northeast Frontier Agency, now Arunachal Pradesh, within India's administrative zone. Tibet agreed to the line, but China, which considered Tibet part of its territory, rejected it outright. For China, this was an illegitimate colonial imposition. The missing agreement. When India became independent in 1947, and China annexed Tibet in 1950, the two nations never signed a final boundary agreement. The Himalayas became a boundary of perception, not agreement. The British left behind maps, but not mutual understanding. For soldiers decades later, this would mean patrolling borders where each side believed the other had crossed into their land, without realizing they were both looking at different maps. Chapter 2: Brothers Turned Rivals. In the 1950s, India and China appeared to be on a historic path of friendship. Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru and Chairman Mao Zedong proclaimed, "Hindi Chini bye bye, Indians and Chinese are brothers." India supported China's claim to a permanent seat at the UN Security Council and even refused US proposals to take it for itself. But while the smiles filled newspapers, a different story unfolded in the barren heights of Aksai Chin. China quietly began constructing a strategic road linking Tibet to Xinjiang, cutting through territory claimed by India. It was only in 1957 that India discovered the road was complete. Diplomatic protests failed, and trust began to crumble. Chapter 3: The 1962 War. October 1962 shattered the illusion of brotherhood. Without formal declaration, Chinese forces launched coordinated assaults in two sectors. Ladakh Aksai Chin in the west. Northeast Frontier Agency Arunachal Pradesh in the east. India's army, underprepared for high-altitude warfare, lacked adequate winter clothing, heavy artillery, and logistics for the Himalayan terrain. Chinese troops, well acclimatized and supplied, overwhelmed Indian defenses. Within a month, China had taken all of Aksai Chin and advanced deep into Nepha. Then, in a surprising move, Beijing declared a unilateral ceasefire and withdrew in the east, but kept Aksai Chin. The psychological impact was immense. In India, the war was a national trauma. In China, it was a demonstration of power. The LAC was born, not as a negotiated boundary, but as the line where both armies stopped fighting. Chapter 4: The Frozen Front. From 1962 to the late 1980s, the border was cold but not quiet. 1967, Nathula and Chola Sikkim Indian troops repelled Chinese advances, inflicting heavy casualties in fierce firefights. 1975, 4 Indian soldiers were ambushed and killed at Tulingla in Arunachal, the last fatalities until 2020. In the 1990s, India and China signed confidence-building agreements: no shooting, no large troop movements without notice, and disputes to be handled diplomatically. But they never demarcated the lack on a shared map. This meant each side patrolled to what it believed was the lac, and every patrol could become a standoff. Chapter 5, Doklam, The Bhutan Connection 2017. In June 2017, Chinese construction crews began building a road in Doklam, a strategically vital plateau claimed by Bhutan but close to India's vulnerable Chicken's Neck, the narrow Siliguri corridor that connects mainland India to its northeast. Under its security treaty with Bhutan, India sent troops to stop the construction. For 73 tense days, Indian and Chinese soldiers stood eyeball to eyeball, shoving, jostling, and shouting. Neither side fired a shot, but the standoff became a global headline. When both sides withdrew, the road project was halted, but Beijing saw India as obstructing its rise, and New Delhi saw China as testing its resolve. Chapter 6, Galwan Valley, Blood on Ice 2020. On the night of June 15, 2020, in the remote Galwan Valley of eastern Ladakh, a patrol confrontation turned deadly. Bound by earlier agreements not to use firearms, soldiers fought with clubs, stones, and bare hands on steep, icy ridges. In the freezing dark, 20 Indian soldiers and at least 4 Chinese soldiers died, some from injuries, others from falling into the icy river. This was the first bloodshed on the lac in 45 years. The brutality shocked the world. For many Indians, Galwan became a rallying cry. For China, it was a reminder of the risks of uncontrolled escalation. Chapter 7, The New Cold War in the Himalayas. After Galwan, both sides poured massive resources into the border. Over 50,000 troops each, stationed year-round at over 15,000 feet. Tanks, howitzers, drones, and fighter jets deployed to high-altitude airfields. India fast-tracked roads, tunnels, and bridges in Ladakh. China built new barracks and helipads. The confrontation extended into economics. India banned over 300 Chinese apps, restricted Chinese investments, and promoted self-reliance in manufacturing. Yet, paradoxically, bilateral trade hit record highs. The battlefield had become a stage for a larger strategic rivalry. Chapter 8, Arunachal and Tawang 2022-2024. China's increased patrols near Tawang in Arunachal Pradesh triggered new confrontations. In December 2022, dozens of soldiers on both sides were injured in another melee battle. Beijing renamed dozens of Arunachal locations on its official maps, a symbolic move India flatly rejected. Skirmishes continued into 2023 and 2024, each one testing nerves and readiness. Chapter 9, Diplomacy in the Thin Air. Since 2020, military commanders from both nations have met over 20 times at the lac. While disengagement has occurred in some flashpoints like Pangong, other areas remain tense. China insists India halt infrastructure expansion, seeing it as a threat. India demands a return to the pre-2020 troop positions. Talks remain polite but unyielding, a diplomatic chess match played at oxygen-starved altitudes. Chapter 10, Human Stories from the Border. For the civilians living near the lac, the conflict is not abstract. Grazing pastures have been lost to military zones. Movement is restricted. Families are split by borders they cannot cross. Yet, old cultural ties endure. Buddhist monasteries in Ladakh and Arunachal still share rituals with Tibetan counterparts. In border markets, ancient trade goods, salt, wool, butter, tea, once flowed freely before geopolitics froze the routes. Chapter 11, The Global Dimension. India-China tensions ripple far beyond Asia. The Quad, United States, Japan, Australia, aligns more openly with India. Russia, once India's closest ally, now maintains warmer ties with China due to shared rivalry with the West. Pakistan, already locked in disputes with India, offers Beijing diplomatic support. The lac is no longer just a local issue, it is a node in the emerging multipolar order. Chapter 12, The Road Ahead. The Himalayas have seen centuries of traders, pilgrims, warriors, and now, soldiers armed with drones and missiles. Whether these peaks echo with peace or gunfire in the years ahead will depend on choices made in Beijing and New Delhi. In these frozen heights, the future of Asia is being written, one patrol, one negotiation, one long winter at a time. For centuries, the Himalayas have stood untouched, eternal. Empires have risen and fallen, maps have been drawn and redrawn, yet these mountains remain. Here, on the line of actual control, the battle is not only for land, but for trust, a trust eroded by history and hardened by blood. Whether these ridges become bridges of friendship or front lines of another war will be decided not by the icy winds, but by the warm hands of diplomacy. Until then, the Himalayas will keep their silence, and their secrets. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this journey through history and geopolitics, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Global Insights 365.